Welcome to Amateur Redneck Workshop. I'm Harold. Uh, Today I got a little something to talk to you about here, and it's called the FP45 Liberator. Now this was basically a, uh, a sheet metal pistol. It was made in World War II. What happened is a Polish military attaché proposed it to the War Department of the U.S. and they decided it sounded like a good idea, and so they decided to make these disposable pistols. Now this FP45 Liberator, the idea was that these pistols would be built and they would be disposable, and they'd fly over in Europe and drop them behind enemy lines, for the people that was in the resistance movement and everything. So they were cheap, they were disposable, and I'd hate been the guy had to use it, but it was also a single shot. It looked like a regular pistol there, but up in the handle, the only thing that the bullets up in there for is they're stored there, the extras. And production on this gun started in 1942. And we were wondering, of course, why I'm telling you all this. It's a tie-in to tell you about some guy's channel that I want to tell you about. Anyway, in 1942, the General Motors Company built 1 million of these little boogers in about 6 months. In fact, the whole project from beginning to end, production, everything, took about 6 months. These guns was put in a box with a few rounds of 45 ammo and a cartoon-like instruction sheet on how to use it. And then they flew off over, I guess, in France and other places and dropped them behind the enemy lines so that the local resistance would have these guns. Now, they weren't any hot stuff. They were intended for you to be up 4 or 5 foot from the guy you were going to plug with it because, it's not a wonderful weapon. And then you could take his weapons, which would, of course, be much better quality. Nice thing about this gun is if you got one of these and it's in the original box and you've got the original instruction sheet, you're holding more than $2 million worth of collector's items. And that's a sheet metal pistol. So that brings me on to why I told you all that. There's a guy on YouTube called Clinton Westwood. His name's got a ring to it somehow. Anyway, Clinton Westwood set out and built himself a sheet metal pistol. Only his is not a single shot. His is a semi-automatic, and it works good. So I thought that those of you that are interested in this stuff, you'd like to take a look at his channel. I don't have a link to it here, but it's easy. Go on YouTube, search for Clinton Westwood, and you'll find him. All right. So what today's video is about is the boss lady decided that we needed a shed in the backyard because I was getting too much junk piled up on the patio, and so we got us a shed in the backyard. I ordered one through Home Depot. It's a Lifetime, I think model 6805 or something like that. The number's in the title of the video, and so I'm just going to show you what I went through building that shed and what it looks like when it gets through, and you can see what one of them looks like from Lifetime Supply. It's a plastic shed, so it's not it's not a concrete building, or I'd say it's about as big as a restroom in Keith Rucker's new workshop. So they give you an idea how big it is, but it's out there in the backyard and you'll get to see it. Anyway, let's talk about Bubba. Bubba, he was going along the riverbank one day, had his Zebco fishing reel, rod and reel thing, folded up in a little pack on his back, and he had a bucket full of fish. The game warden stopped him and says, "Hey, Bubba, where's your fishing license, Bubba?" Bubba says, "I ain't got one. Don't need no fishing license." Game warden said, "Well, I think I beg to differ about that. you know, you got to have a license to go fishing. Bubba says, nope, I ain't been fishing. Game warden says, no, come on, Bubba, I can see you got a bucket full of fish. Bubba says, them's my pets. Game warden says, pets? What are you talking about? Bubba says, every week, he says, I bring my pets down to the river. He said, I let them swim for a while. Then I call them back in and get them in the bucket and take them back home, put them in the pond. Game warden says, I never heard such a tall, stupid tale in my whole life. Bubba says, oh, he says, I'm swearing to you, it's the honest to God truth. I can prove it. Game warden says, all right, prove it. So Bubba pours that bucket of fish over in the water. They both stand there looking around for a while. After probably about 10 minutes, game warden says, all right, he says, call in them fish. Bubba says, what fish? Oh, Bubba, he may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I guess he was sharper than the game warden. Well, let's get on with building a shed. Oh, and this is a better video than usual because the boss lady consented to come out and supervise the job and make things go right. So here we go. Well, there's day one of the shed building. I went down and bought some pavers and a little sand to go under them so I can level them up, and some 2x4s, and those yellow 2x12s that are laying on the ground there just to mark off the edges of stuff. I'm going to take the 2x12s and rip them down to 2x4s because I need two 10-footers, and that's exactly what they are, and they'll be nailed on for the subfloor for this thing. It doesn't come with an actual useful subfloor. It's just got a plastic floor, you know, that you stick together like a floor mat. So I've decided to put those pavers down, and I'll have to get some 2x4s and level it up, and I guess as long as they're reasonably square and level, it'd be okay if it runs downhill an inch or so some direction, but I'm going to try to prevent that. And so tomorrow I'll get busy on leveling stuff up, nailing the frame for the floor together, and I got plywood for it too. Miss Daisy there doesn't really like all these changes. She doesn't like the stuff in her yard. She's not happy about it. Well, it seems like there's always a fly in my ointment, and I don't have the actual paper manual for the shed, but I downloaded this stuff, and son of a gun, I've got it facing the wrong direction. If I want the door on this end toward the house, it's got to be the 8-foot width, so I've got to move those stupid blocks around, some of them, and change it to another orientation. I got to turn the thing 90 degrees. Well, at least it's not much to do at this stage, but I'll just have to get the gloves on and get out there and move the stuff. My ability to screw up amazes even me, and I've been me for 70 years and a little extra. Move this over. If you look at those 2x12s there, I thought those suckers were 10 feet long, and it turns out they're 8 feet. I was going to rip my two 10-footers out of that. So I'm going to rip one up to get an 8-footer, extra 8-footer. All that wood's treated, and the other ones are treated and painted, so they should be good for something. So it's back to the lumber yard to get a couple of 10-footers to go down that side there, or on each side. Maybe I won't make a whole lot more screw-ups. If you look down at that paver, you may see that it's broke. I didn't do that throwing it on the ground or anything. There was just a hollow spot, and I stepped on it, and it just popped in half. And the same thing happened right over there. So concrete you expect to be really strong, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is. They say the concrete gets stronger with age. Maybe it'll get stronger as it ages. You can see I got a lot of gaps under the boards. You can see by the shadow on the block. And I'll rake a little sand under there and try to get them all nice and level.
and I imagine it's going to take me the rest of the afternoon just to put that stuff together and get it level and square. Anyway, right now I got to go to the lumber yard and get 2 more 2x4 10-foot. Or not 2 more, but 2 in the first place. Things are coming right on along. I finally got all of the pavers to touch the 2x4s, and the level's looking pretty good. I can show you. No, I've got it over here. Let's see if I can zoom in on that level. I might can. There we go. That's it. That's the middle one right there. And as you can see, it's pretty level. I'll move the camera. The camera's square with things. If I can find the level. There we go. So I'm going to nail down that wrong direction. I'm going to nail down that plywood on one corner, and then I'll slide it around till I get it even with the other corner, and then I'll drag in the next piece of plywood. And I think this is recording. Yeah. All right, and then I'll bring you back. Okay, 10 bags of sand. Well, 9.5. I got a half a bag left over, and I left a little bitty lip there on one side just in case I'm not totally right about how square it is. I can depend on that some, and if I make a little preliminary attempt at laying out the floor and it looks pretty good, well, I'll come back with a skill saw and cut that sucker off. I've got it marked, so I guess the only thing left now is to get a tarp to go over it and wait for the packages of the little shed to arrive. I'm sitting here waiting for the shed to be delivered, and I got my trusty sidekick here helping me. She's been doing what she does best, which is sleeping. And while I'm waiting, I'm watching Tom Lipton play with his baby bullet. So there you go. Well, I was going to include the truck arriving in the video, but right then the camera was dead. The battery was no go. But I got 2 boxes and 500 and something pounds of plastic. And I checked out in the yard. And there's a lot of water on top of that little plastic tarp, and there's a lot of water in the grass around it. So that means that I don't have to wait at least a day probably for the ground to dry out a little bit. The weeds are starting to get a head start out there. I got to get the mower cranked up and knock them down. Got to get something on them because they are really getting healthier by the minute. But we're almost up to putting the shed together. Now, admittedly, I skipped ahead in the instructions a little bit, and I laid the floor down over there and made sure it fits square. And then on this edge where I left a piece to trim off, I just marked the line down it and took my skill saw and cut it off, and now that floor sticks just about a 1/4 inch off the edge all the way around, which I assume is intended to help water drain off. In the first of the instructions, they want you to put together the roof trusses, and so that's what I'm doing right now. And it's not all that hard once you use your tape measure to measure them out, and then you recognize what the pieces are. All the instructions and the bags of screws and everything were in box 2, which was on the bottom. So I had to take everything out of box 1 because I couldn't pick it up, and there's all the goodies out of box 1. That's the roof and the gables and the doors and stuff like that. The walls and the other stuff were in the second box. And I've got just a whole pile of bags of hardware of various and sundry descriptions and I got to get all that together for us, or these all the roof trusses together before I start getting the sides put together. Well, yesterday we ran out of daylight before we could get finished. Got about 3/4 of the way around, I guess, or half, maybe that's halfway, and ran out of light, and we've stomped a mud hole all the way around the thing, so it's back to it. Okay, so the second afternoon, we managed to get it dried in. So far we've put in probably about 9 hours on this thing, and all the pieces are on it except for working out the door latch there. I've got a little misalignment on the piece, and I've got 2 metal pieces left over, which are probably what's wrong with the door latch. But anyway, we've got it, everything is, I guess they would say, dried in, and all that's left for me to do the little finishing touches, and I'm going to paint the foundation of it there, nice brown paint, and make a little ramp so I can get stuff up into it. And we'll go over and take a little look at the inside. There's the inside part of it, and one of the ladders I was using to reach the stuff up in the top, it's got those skylights in the top, they like to call them. I call them sort of light spots. But anyway, they were difficult to get in because you had to reach your hand from the next hole down around to get a hold of the sucker. And it was supposed to be a 2-man job, but I found a way to make it a 1-man job, and it worked out. So let's have a little more tour. This is the included window, which is about as flimsy a piece of cheap crap as I reckon I've ever seen. There's no way that could keep water out. It might keep out birds and larger bugs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a tube of silicone seal, and I'm going to seal it down good and tight, and it'll never move again, you know. They could have done almost anything besides that. The darn thing's probably, well, it's hard to even wide enough on the edges to come over there. I've got room for the silicone seal, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to seal it up so that it doesn't have rainwater coming in. Right here is a good spot for rainwater, because there's a little crack up there. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a crack there where it doesn't really cover everything. Oh well, anyway, the job for today is to move that little, you can't see it, but there's a little metal bar above the door. I need to move it about 1 inch to the right so that the door latching things on the one door will go into it, and then I'll go around in here and do things like screwing it down to the foundation so the wind doesn't keep moving it. When I put the floor together, I measured it against the foundation, and then I trimmed it off so that there was maybe almost 1/4 of an inch of plastic hanging off the edge of the stupid thing. But somehow I guess the floor is spread out or something, because now there's well, I guess the floor shrunk in, that's what I meant to say, because now I've got a little wood exposed around the edges. But I'll caulk all that in an attempt to make it semi-waterproof. They did tell me to drill holes between every 2x4 in the bottom, and I did that. 3 holes between each 2x4 for drainage. And I guess the reason you'd want drainage is because you expect the sucker to leak like a sieve. So there you are. Shelves that might hold about 50 pounds. I don't know why they would include them. There's a lot of things they could have done different on putting this sucker together, though. On the design, the sides are held in by little tabs that are kind of hard to push down in it, but that's just from me just putting, you know, my 190 pounds of weight on it, and a big wind blowing should be able to detach the sides from that little catch without any problem at all. So, well, what the heck, huh? Anyway, I've got just a tiny little bit of finishing up to do on this thing. Like I say, some painting and some caulking and finishing up that door and finding out where those two little metal pieces go. Undoubtedly they're part of the door latch, and being hard of understanding, I didn't recognize
Door
where to put
hinges
them.
they're in predefined holes down at the bottom of the door, and up at the top of the door it's just a pipe, steel pipe that runs down the edge of the inside of the door, and they've got a hole molded, you know, and everything for all that to fit. And the darn doors, they like about a ½ inch actually fitting. So even though I fixed the little door stops at the top and the bottom of the left door, it didn't do me any good, because if I use them, then I can't close the right hand door, because it's a ½ inch overlap, nearly, or at least a ¼ inch overlap of the other door. I guess I could do it with a screwdriver, but anyway, next step, I got to make a ramp, and I got to get some paint. So I'm going to cut this off a little bit shorter, and then I'll run down those lines on the table saw. No use me, you know, doing it the hard way. And yeah, I've cut into the top of the garbage can before. My granddaughter's kind of talented at figuring out things to make, but a lot of times she wants me to do the work. And the last time I was cutting stuff there, I had plywood laying on the garbage cans, and I told her to keep a look underneath so that the blade didn't get too close to the can. And I've got about a ¼ inch notch in one of the lids there, because she quit watching, and I just realized that in time to go look for myself. Since I started on the shed, the beans and such things have been growing pretty good. Of course, that's been 2 or 3 weeks. Let's go around front and see how things finished off. So there we are. Things are put together. Got a ramp in front of it and junk inside it. A little more stuff to go in there, but I was waiting for the paint to dry on the ramp before I run that stupid big old lawnmower in there. But I think things turned out okay. It's not as good a shed if I had built it out of 2x4s and plywood, but it's a shed. So appreciate you watching, and if you'd like to subscribe, that'd be really great, and maybe leave a comment and click the like button. That might work out just right.